I'm reading One Piece for the first time, and I just finished Thriller Bark. Let's talk about it. All right, so first of all, very quick refresher on my One Piece journey. I actually started reading this manga last year, and after each and every arc, I made an in-depth kind of review giving my thoughts and theories and all that jazz. But along the way, I got some copyright strikes for using like One Piece backgrounds, and that obviously made me very nervous. So I took down all my One Piece videos and I kind of just went on hiatus for reading it for a while. Also got busy with other aspects, so it wasn't just the copyright stuff, but that definitely was a big factor. Anyways, I missed One Piece and I want to get caught up and I want to talk about the new stuff that I know is apparently going crazy right now. So I started Thriller Bark today and I finished it in a couple of hours, and it's good to be back in One Piece, man. But I am still nervous about the copyright because I just know that they in particular are notorious about it. So at least for now, I'm not going to do the in-depth arc reviews. I'm just going to make a quick video sharing my thoughts. And maybe we'll go back to the longer ones at some point, but I don't know. We're just gonna kind of have to see. But also, I want to keep reading One Piece. So stopping to make those arc reviews always made me pause for like a week or two while I could make those videos. So this way, I can also continue reading quicker. But anyways, just a little update for my One Piece fans out there. I know a lot of y'all have been wondering when we're gonna get back to it. So we're back to it, and we're kicking things off with Thriller Bark. And this was such a fun arc, especially for this kind of fall, we're about to hit October, spooky season. It was the perfect place to jump back in. All right, so for my quick and dirty highlights, this arc obviously introduced us to a new crew member, Brook. Absolutely love his character so far. Tragic backstory, the last of his crew trying to, carry on their legacy and fulfill his promise of reuniting with Laboon. I was so stoked when that reveal happened that this is who Laboon the whale is waiting for. And as considering he says Laboon can wait a few more years, I'm guessing he won't reunite with him until like the end of the series, after presumably Luffy and co do conquer the Grand Line. I don't know, maybe they've already had a reunion at this point in the manga, but that moment, whenever it happens, is going to be so sweet, and I cannot wait for it. And just a few more thoughts on Brook. I'm really interested to learn more about his character and get a bit deeper with him, because he is fascinating. This character who literally died, came back as a skeleton and was alone, right? Like lost at sea, eventually loses his shadow. Like this man was isolated, and yet he didn't go like absolutely ballistic insane in like a bad way, but really he was able to retain his sense of humor, his like positive outlook on life. And I think it's mostly because he's clutching onto this dream of fulfilling this promise to Laboon, which is like the type of willpower and like pursuit of a dream that perfectly places him amongst the rest of the Straw Hats, right? Like he's got that X factor, and I love that Luffy just like recognizes that in people immediately. So I can't wait to find out more about him. Not that like there's a bunch of mystery necessarily, because we figured out what was going on with him, but just to see kind of like how his character develops and what kind of role he'll play on the crew. And then I gotta say, one of my favorite moments of this arc was kind of this culminating moment of everyone singing Bink Sake. Like in the past, Brooks with his original crew, but also in the present here as they're celebrating, and we know that this is like a famous pirate song. Shank's crew used to sing it. So I really want to dive into these lyrics because I feel like there's going to be a lot of layered meaning. Finally got introduced to this guy, which I had just seen like random clips over the years of this guy. And so now finally getting introduced to him, I'm like, oh, okay, that's who this guy is. But I do not understand his power at all. He can like teleport. He can like extract pain from people. He like moves air at the speed of light. Very curious for what his devil fruit actually is and what it does. But clearly he's a beast. And a cyborg. Now, actually, I shouldn't say cyborg because he tells us that he's more akin to a pacifista, whatever that is. This technology that was created by Dr. Vegapunk, the most brilliant man in the world, who has scientific ability 500 years ahead of our time. Now, this really stood out to me as well, because how is somebody so far advanced, right? Well, to me, it speaks on having information that no one else does, obviously. And we know that like the most important information in the world has been obfuscated and hidden on the poneglyphs or otherwise, right? So the government might be in control of all of this, and thus certain people in the government, like a Dr. Vegapunk, might have access from the forbidden history of the past, which may have been far more technologically advanced than the present, right? If there was some sort of cataclysmic event or whatever that set everything back 500 or 1,000 years, however much, right? So again, it just speaks to me like the government being in control and consolidating the information, trying to wield their own power and hold on to it as long as they can. And then one last thing on this dude that I thought was interesting is when he reveals his paw devil fruit, which again I don't understand. Everyone's like, oh, a paw, like maybe he's a big softy, right? And Frankie even says, oh, he's a warlord of the sea, but maybe he's compassionate. And I think that's one of those statements where there's maybe something there, especially given how this encounter ends with him ultimately letting the Straw Hats go. So this character is fascinating to me because he like came here with explicit orders, and then just seeing this like show from Zoro and Sanji like willing to take the place of Luffy, like it got to him. And again, you know, Zoro obviously has to go through some stuff, but he ultimately leaves without taking any of them. So what's going on with this guy? Also, this moment was cold. I do admit that I've seen clips of him saying like nothing and I didn't really understand what's going on. Now I have the full context. Zoro, you are such a badass. And then for the actual main villain of this arc, I do admit he's kind of goofy, but his power was pretty interesting. But you know, I feel like this was all just kind of par for the course for the tone and vibe and aesthetic of this arc, like creepy Halloween shadow zombie vibes, right? But it got me wondering, like, this power seems ridiculous if it was actually like fully utilized. And it does make me wonder about like what happened to him, because I can't remember the exact statement, but I remember there was like he mentioned like his whole crew was wiped out, and then that's what kind of launched him on this path to create the Shadow Warriors to do his bidding for him. So like he doesn't have to get his hands dirty, he doesn't have to move a muscle. So one, I'm wondering like what did he use his power how did he utilize the power before that? And what happened, right? There could be like some sort of tragedy here where like he lost everything and it kind of sent him down this dark spirally zombie path. So I'm very curious, what kind of led him to this position. Also, I gotta just say, I love the way that Oda expanded on the world building through this cover story of Enel traveling to the moon and discovering this whole society up there and learning of the history of those people with the wings. Like obviously that's what led to the Skypiea people, right? And I'm wondering like how much of this history is actually known, especially given, the way the world history has clearly been tampered with, right? Now, obviously this isn't on the poneglyphs or anything, so people might know this, but it seemed to be a revelation to him, and he was like the temporary leader of Skypiea. So I'm wondering if they even know their own ancestry of having hailed from the moon. Very curious. Now, for anyone who happened to catch my old arc reviews before I had to take them down, you'll know that one of the things I was most interested in was the concept of will in One Piece, and specifically how that relates to the will of D, which has been a concept that has been brought up a couple of times, right? And the concept of how wills can be inherited in One Piece, it's all very murky and nebulous and hasn't been explained, but clearly there's something there. So when Chopper said this, it piqued my interest that, even a soulless body can have will. Now, obviously, this was in reference to what was happening in this arc with the shadows and the zombies and all that jazz. So he might not have meant anything beyond just that explicit context right there. But me, I'm wondering, okay, here we again have wills and showcasing that will can kind of transcend body. It can kind of transcend soul. And if this will of D is this kind of incorporeal thing that can in fact be inherited by generation after generation, that too speaks to will being like its own thing in One Piece. And so like, what is that, right? And is it tied to a specific individual, like an originator of the will that then has been passed down, or is it even that first person? Was it not really theirs? Are these just like concepts within One Piece that are like eternal? I don't know. Like we're already getting crazy with the theory crafting, and we just got back into it. But this panel stood out to me. Look at me, already getting yappy, but I did want to keep this one short. I literally just finished this arc, so I wanted to come give my thoughts, but really enjoyed this arc. A bunch of fun characters were introduced, and so many great little moments, too. It felt like each Straw Hat kind of got their moment to shine, whether it was in their fights with all of these respective people, or even when they came together and showed like why they are such a great crew fighting for one another, and especially when there was like a great moment where they all kind of like stood up and were like, we're Luffy's crew. You think you were going to beat us that easily? When they were fighting Oz, who had Luffy's shadow. Just, again, so many great moments. It's great to be back in One Piece, and I'm excited to keep going.